say Destiny 2 was underwhelming at launch would be an understatement. Thanks to mismanagement and poor decisions, Bungie repeated the same mistakes that plagued the original's development. It wasn't until the Forsaken and Shadowkeep expansions roughly a year later that it finally reached the level of quality that it should have been from the beginning, free from the oversight and idiotic mandates of Activision that were holding it back. With that said, there was a lot of cause for joyful optimism for the game's not only latest expansion, but true first expansion for the new light version of the game, Beyond Light, with it not only promising plenty of new content, but also new story elements that would finally introduce the series' enigmatic villain the Darkness and really push the universe forward. Then, I played it. The end product is the Destiny 2 expansion that I have not only enjoyed the most out of all of them, but also one that has frustrated me more than Curse of Osiris. More than anything, it was the story that left me furious. Not because it was bad, but because I had to play through it barely knowing just what was going on. This was thanks to technical issues I faced while playing, where during most of the cinematics, the frame rate for whatever reason just dropped into single digits, causing the game to crash in a lot of instances. There was a fix for this, but it stopped working after I finally got to try out the new stasis powers. But at the very least, the game didn't crash during the cinematics, but that doesn't mean they were watchable by any stretch of the imagination. But from what little I could get at the story, I can say at the very least it is interesting. For one, we finally get to see the Darkness impact the world of Destiny in a physical presence. We get a more three-dimensional look, somewhat, at the Fallen, and that goes beyond them simply just being villains. As well, we also get a great callback to Destiny 1's story with the return of the Exo Stranger, and finally finding out what she didn't have time to explain to us. There's also a number of changes to the core experience. Some of these are great, but others will raise eyebrows, like Gambit Prime being removed and merged with normal Gambit, so now it's only one round, or the removal of various Crucible maps. One of the biggest though is the loss of access to zones like Io, Titan, the Leviathan, Mercury, and Mars, as well as all of the activities that are tied to them, as well as content from the annual pass. And while there are narrative reasons for this, it really can't help but feel like a needless ripoff, since a lot of these were content that were part of paid expansions, so it feels like we're really just getting denied access to something we paid for. Though to be fair, they aren't deleted, rather they've been data vaulted, and Bungie has stated that they may return later as the story of Destiny unfolds further. The apparent reason for this was to make room for more content down the line, but considering games like Warframe or Path of Exile have been adding new permanent content on top of what came before, it begs the question why Bungie just couldn't do the same with Destiny. But on the more positive side of things, there's a few new additions to the tower, such as an exotics archive, giving us a new avenue to acquire older exotics in the game, which is just awesome, since this is a great way to get exotics you may have not been able to acquire earlier in the game's life. In my case, I'm planning on finally getting my hands on the bloody Rat King. It's going to be so awesome when I get that. There's also a quest archive too, so you can reacquire quests that you may have abandoned and want to finally catch up on. We also get two new zones added to the game. One is the Cosmodrome zone from Destiny 1. I found this to be a treat to finally check this place out, while the other is where the Beyond Light campaign primarily takes place, an all-new zone on Jupiter's moon of Europa. Now the Europa zone is great. It's large with plenty of nooks and crannies to encourage exploration and plenty of detail to distinguish the regions, from the sterile apple aesthetics of the Exo research facilities to barren snow slopes and the derelict remains of civilian buildings with fallen infrastructure. What's more is that this zone feels more alive than any of the others, with snowfall picking up into storms and reducing visibility, which can really make enemy encounters riskier. All of this comes together into something that just exudes a cold charm and a great deal of character that sets it apart from the other zones currently in the game, and I dare say it's the best one by far. Then there's the new Stasis subclasses that are fantastic and a lot of fun to try out. My Hunter in particular became a Revenant, then that gave him a new ultimate that unleashed two tornadoes that froze enemies in place after throwing ice picks at them, and these over time would wear down their health until they shattered after freezing them in place. The other new abilities this gave him as well centered around slowing down enemy speed or redirecting their movements, which added some really nice tactical options every time I got into a firefight, and what's more is that these new subclasses subclasses are upgradable. You acquire items such as fragments and aspects, which can add perks to the subclasses, modifying abilities at the cost of impacting your armor stats either positively or negatively. This is a fantastic addition to the game, and in hindsight seems so obvious that it should have been in it since the beginning. In the meantime, it'll be interesting to see if Bungie decides to apply this to the pre-existing subclasses. But if I did have to issue one criticism about the new stasis powers, it would be that they just lack impact. For instance, my Hunter's new melee ability was a shuriken that would bounce between enemies and freezing them after dealing a little bit of damage. The problem is that it wasn't all that satisfying to pull off because every time I threw it, it felt like I was throwing a water bomb that never blew up. Same thing with the ultimate. Other than that, these things are fun to play with. There's also some really great loot to work towards in Beyond Light. One of the best is the No Time to Explain, a pulse rifle that pulls previous shots from the past to refire them at enemies in the present. Not only are these awesome rewards to work towards, but the quests around them continue Beyond Light's story past the campaign, such as revealing that Clovis Bray is still alive in some form, and also serve the purpose of getting the player ready for the new endgame content. The endgame itself, though, unfortunately I can't comment on. I didn't have enough time to actually reach it. But at the very least, the build-up to it is a fun grind. That I can say with confidence.
Clovis Bray wasn't a good man, but this proves he was a...
More than anything else, Beyond Light feels like a reworking of Destiny 2 combined with a soft launch of 3, thanks to the volume of content no longer available and the new stuff that's meant to take their place. For me personally, I did enjoy my time with it in equal measure the times I was frustrated, but that's just me. People who are likely to get the most mileage out of this expansion are the veteran players who've been playing since the first game, not someone like me who's only been able to play since the launch of the second. They're the ones who will be able to really appreciate the changes and the frustration of the lost content more than anyone else. Hey sweet, thanks for checking out this video, I really do appreciate it, and if you really liked it, by all means hit the like and the subscribe buttons. Now, for the next game review, I'm actually going to be changing things up. Originally, I was planning to review Cyberpunk 2077, but due to personal time constraints and having way too much on my plate, I'm actually changing that. I'm still going to take a look at the game, but instead of a review, I'm actually going to be doing a kinda showcase, taking a look at some of my personal favorite games that I checked out during the lockdowns, with Cyberpunk being included as the finale. And I've also got another movie review that is long overdue, taking a look at SpongeBob Sponge on the Run. I got all that and more coming up, so please stick around.